Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. So I finally got around to watching Masters of the Universe Revelation, and I have to say, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with it. It was a lot of what I anticipated it to be. I wasn't really surprised by what I saw. I was, again, hoping that my expectations would be subverted by it actually being good. That didn't happen, unfortunately. Now, we'll say a couple things, right? Animation was okay. At times, it got a little bit more choppier this time around. Some of the casting choices for the voice work are questionable to me. Maybe I just didn't notice it beforehand with Queen Marlena specifically, but I guess because she didn't have a whole lot to say the first time around. This time around, though, the voice just didn't fit, and then come to find out after the fact that she was actually portrayed by Alicia Silverstone, so it makes sense why she said at one point "as if," which was completely out of place in that in this series. Because again, look, we're looking at He-Man here. We're not looking at pop culture, broadly. When we think of He-Man here, nobody that's watching He-Man is thinking about Clueless. Okay, they're just not. So, and there was things like this that they, of course, also did in the first half of the series, but it becomes much more noticeable this time around when they do stuff like that. Because again, it's just that out of place that they do it. But that's a minor gripe. Like I said, one thing I will give it is that this time around they did include a bit more action. You get a little bit more He-Man, but that's not saying much considering that he still is not the central figure. He's not the central character in this, as he should be. He's still playing a supporting role to Teela in this one, which again is something that I did anticipate. There was a lot of things that were left, in my opinion, unresolved, and I guess you could say that when you see the end of it, maybe that's why, knowing that the way it ends, they're setting it up for yet another season. Maybe that's why they left some of the plot points unresolved. But I have no interest in seeing the next series, just because this one really didn't land for me, and also because I believe that they wasted a lot of opportunities to do stuff. I mean, you get Skeletor at a point where he finally gets the sort of power, but then they also relegate him to taking the back seat along with He-Man in favor of Evil Lyn. And then they do this whole thing with Evil Lyn, who apparently has a more evil plan than even Skeletor does, and they don't really do anything with that after the fact. They just make her, they give her kind of a little bit of redemption afterwards. It's like, hey, you tried to destroy the entire universe, and just so y'all know, there will be a couple of spoilers, although I will try to keep them to a minimum. But hey, that's cool. You could go live in peace, even though you tried to destroy pretty much all of existence, which I thought was absolutely ludicrous. But again, just my opinion, none of that really made any kind of sense to me. Then you have Teela being just as insufferable as she was in the first part. She apparently can get her way no matter what. And she can say, screw the rules. I will do things my way, and that's just how it is, which I thought was pretty dumb. But again, is what it is. Like I said, overall, I did not like the series. I thought there was a lot of missed opportunities with this time around. I called a couple things. A lot of things were terribly predictable. Savage He-Man, of course, as I had said in a previous video, is probably going to be the He-Man, the Hulk version, I should say, of He-Man, and that's exactly what he was. They didn't really expand more on it. He only appeared in the beginning. That's it. Went away. Then Adam was just kind of languishing for a little bit until he gets the sword back at the end. So again, not a whole lot of him being He-Man, just except the beginning and the end of it. It's neither here nor there. But like I said, in fairness, at least we got more He-Man this time around. But overall, the characters didn't feel like they got that much more development, even though they try to make you think that they do. They're essentially still the same, and just as boring. The series, I felt, dragged a lot. A lot of the same contrived jokes that were in the first half came back around this time. No surprise there either. I just felt that there was a lot of lazy writing. And I guess the biggest thing I would say in regards to Skeletor is the best way I could compare it is if you guys have seen Avengers Age of Ultron. My biggest gripe with that movie, I think it's the worst Avengers movie, but my biggest gripe with it was that they focused so heavily on the looming threat of Thanos that it kind of diminished the impact that Ultron had in this movie. You kind of, it to me, it felt like they relegated him to the villain of the week status. You knew the heroes were going to overcome it. The threat didn't seem as bad because you know that out in the ether, there's this bigger threat that's going to be coming down the line. So, hey, we're just getting through this guy right now so that we can get on to the bigger threat, you know, the real big baddie. And that's what I felt they did with Avengers Age of Ultron, that I thought was a great disservice to the character of Ultron by doing that. Again, just my opinion. You can agree to disagree or not. It's up to you, but that's just what I thought. And that's kind of what I felt that they did with Skeletor in He-Man Revelations. You know, they finally get him to get the power, and it's just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess, you know, Evelyn's the bigger threat, and her plans are even worse. And it's just like, you think that that's, you know, it's something that by the end you're just like, how is there redemption for this character after wanting to do something even more heinous, right? It's just like, oh, well, it's because of stuff that happened in her past. That's another thing that they did in this series as well that I didn't really care for. They did this whole, you know, everybody singing Kumbaya, getting in a group circle, having a therapy session about their feelings and things like that, which I really didn't care for. I thought it was pointless. I didn't think it really added anything. It didn't add more depth to the characters. It was, again, just one of those choices in the writing that I'm just like, okay, you know, I want to see action fantasy here, not have the Breakfast Club in He-Man form, but okay, whatever. So overall, like I said, didn't really add much to the series. Like I said, one good thing that it did do, a little bit more action, but a lot of it feels very disjointed when it does happen, and a lot of random things feel like they're happening. I can only really describe it as a cocaine-induced fever dream of action sequences, but at least there was more action this time around, so I will give it that. But I want to go over this here real quick. This is an article that I had seen, and I had some thoughts on it, and we'll just go ahead and close out this video. It says, Masters of the Universe Revelations Part 2 Review, Reboot puts He-Man in the backseat. Well, he had company this time around, so he wasn't back there alone. So it says here, spoilers for Masters of the Universe Revelation. Masters of the Universe Revelation may have just gotten started after it finishes Season 2 in an intense 5-episode series. So it's actually Part 2 because they're all a part of one season as far as I know. Just they cut it in half. So the cutting-edge animation and the ambitious storytelling works well, but the final fight packs in too much of a sorcery battle to make the end look a lot more like a life lesson. I mean, I guess that's one way to look at it, right? That, though, doesn't mean Revelation is a disappointment. I would disagree. The twists and surprises make it worth the watch, and the episodes with a crisp, less than 30 minutes runtime makes it a breezy affair. I mean, it is pretty easy to get through because of that. I will say that. But it does drag, even despite the episodes being short. And I would also say that the twists are not really all that surprising if you're paying attention. You could kind of, it's very predictable. You could kind of see the writing on the wall, especially with the stuff with Evelyn. You kind of see it coming a mile away. I was just like, oh man, that's what they're gonna do. Okay, she's basically gonna take the power herself, and she's okay. I get it. The final showdown is gonna be her and Tila. So you'd see it coming a mile away. Like I said, it was terribly predictable. The second part of the series delves into a lot of the people that make Eternia, the role of the sorceress, and the fact that the Power Sword is just a conduit for harnessing champion superpower. Ultimately, the shocker at the end that says a new chapter is over the horizon. Somewhere in all these explanations, Revelations loses itself and focuses more on the magic and appreciation of the universe. Such is the focus on the world building that the battle between He-Man and Skeletor takes a back seat. And like I said, you see that more when you get to the very end, that they're setting things up, obviously, for another season. But it could have been something way more grandiose, and it really falls flat. You know, it just does not deliver. Last we saw Tila and her band of heroes and villains succeed in bringing Prince Adam from Preternia, only for them to discover that Skeletor was hiding Evelyn's scepter the entire time. He seizes the right opportunity to grab the Power Sword and become Skelegod, an improved and far powerful version who dictates the terms for the first couple of the episodes. Soon after, the threat arises in the form of a disgruntled Evil-Lyn that also ends with an unlikely team-up between the good and the evil that most Ardents didn't expect. You see it coming a mile away. Like I said, it becomes pretty apparent that that's where they're going with it. It's really not that hard to predict. People, they make it seem like the story was, oh, it's such a twist and turn, I didn't see that coming. Trust me, if you're paying attention, you will see it coming. It is predictable. At least I thought it was. So much of He-Man is seen only in the final 2 chapters, and until that time, it is all a Prince Adam show who proves that being a hero isn't about ripping huge muscles and the sword. Sarah Michelle Gellar-Tila and Lena Headey's Evil-Lyn steal the show, in the end making He-Man more of a supporting character. He absolutely was a supporting character in this, make no mistake. This may not sit down too well with some sections of the audience, but we're willing to let this pass under the assumption that there might be a part 3 in the offing. I mean, it's pretty apparent that that's what they're going for, right? Is that they're going for a part 3. Maybe the focus will shift back around to He-Man, maybe. But at this point, I just don't care enough. I'm pretty much done. It's not enough to interest me to go see part 3 because of how much of a letdown this was. So, Teela and Evil-Lyn's past are better explored, making them key characters in the series. The latter was seen siding with the heroes, and the betrayal by the one who claims to have made her stings her hard as she goes on a universe-destroying spree. Teela's metamorphosis from a warrior to a sorceress is an emotional journey, and these aspects lend more depth to the show. No, they don't. They make it seem like it's much more emotional than what it is. I was not emotionally invested at all. Never got to that point. They never really, like, from the Orko stuff to the Teela stuff to the sorceress stuff, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you see the series, I felt nothing. Like, I felt it didn't pull on the emotional heartstrings. I don't feel that they did enough to build any of that up. I was not emotionally invested at all. A lot of it felt very superficial with the way it was presented, very kind of ham-fisted, like they were really trying to force that out of you instead of writing it much more organically, I felt. But, it is what it is. They really wanted to almost like force you last minute instead of doing a gradual build towards that. The problem is, again, you don't really feel it because the way they write Teela, again, she's an insufferable character and a very unlikable character, so you don't really empathize with her or sympathize with her as much as you could have had she been a little bit more likable, had she been a little bit more relatable, which I don't believe that she was at all. And the thing with the sorceress, that, again, that's something that they really could have built up a little bit better as well. Because when it happens, you're just like, well, okay. I mean, that's it. It's just, okay. Well, that happened. I mean, again, something else that you kind of get the sense that it's coming, and then it happens. Oh, well, all right. I guess that happened to the sorceress. That's how she meets her fate. Whatever. So, let's see. Most majority of these aspects, Masters of the Universe Revelations impresses in a draggy sort of way. I mean, there's a lot of dragging in it, but safe to say this reboot is a success. That remains to be seen. That'll really be dependent on how the merchandising goes, because that's what keeps stuff like this going. Is how much merchandise sells, which I would say it will probably sell well. The figures do look, regardless of how you feel about the show, I think the figures look pretty decent. I'm sure there'll be something that collectors will like. But, I can see them probably selling relatively well. If they don't, for whatever reason, the chances of seeing a part 3 will diminish. I mean, unless, Kevin Smith is able to influence the decision a little bit, which maybe he will, maybe he won't. We've seen it with other shows sometimes, even though they're not necessarily deserving of a next season. I'm pretty sure with enough audience reception, it's a show that's polarizing enough. Half people like it, half people don't. Maybe it'll merit at least one more part. it's hard to tell right now. It just depends on how people react and how the merchandising sales. But if we were to go by the merchandising sales, if they end up being very well, of course that'll be enough for them to certainly push for another season. That's usually how it works with stuff like this. Merchandising has a lot of influence on whether or not shows like this do continue to be made. I mean, so that's something to take into consideration. Of course, again, with enough fan support as well, that can also help. But for me, overall, didn't care for it. Part 2 did not make things better, in my opinion. It's at best, the way I feel about the series is, it's not a series that I would watch again. Not a series that I would care to continue watching at this point. It's just there. It exists. It's, if you want to slog through the episodes, go right ahead. If you enjoyed it, I'm happy for you. Great for you. I personally did not care for it, and that's fine. And if you disagree with that, totally okay. Agree to disagree, but just fell flat for me. So that's all I have to say about it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And until next time, y'all know how it goes.